You and he collaborate on the first season, and Ma's a big character and so on. And then things take a bit of a left turn between the two of you. Tell us why.
Well, it's very common in Hollywood that if a show succeeds, then the actors renegotiate their contracts based on the fact that it's a hit. When I got the job, I had no name, I had no reputation. And so when my agent showed me the contract, I said, wait a minute, this isn't what people get paid. And he said, no, don't even worry about that, because if it succeeds, we'll renegotiate at the beginning of the second season. So I began work with that understanding. But when my attorney and I went to see Mike to talk about that, he deflected in every way. He just did not want to discuss it. And we left there with nothing satisfied. And then my attorney said, well, I'll talk to the network, and without you there, maybe we can do business. And this began a cycle of diminishment and punishment and retribution that I could not believe.
Wow.
I never have really understood, Megyn, why Mike was so determined not to pay me a fair salary. But it went on for over a year. I did almost 2 seasons, not knowing what I was going to be paid, and having my part cut and having insults made on the set. And then finally it got settled. And I was like, phew, now we can go back to just being colleagues, and do our work, because we actually liked working together very much.
Did you go back to that place?
It came and went. From then on, I never knew whether we were going to go back to that place, which we sometimes did, or whether he was going to be cold and dismissive.
This, you're very open in the book, was particularly difficult for you because it reminded you of what it's like to be the child of an alcoholic. And your dad was. And it is very inconsistent, right? And that's how it sounds like Michael was too.
Well, that was the echo, what you picked up there, that my dad, whom I adored, we were all crazy about him, but he could turn, and he would turn on me in a vicious way. And this was reminiscent of that. So it really cut through my defenses, and I was very, very vulnerable. And this contributed, I must say, to my own feeling of being a victim and drinking more and really running myself into the ground.
I was shocked to read that you were, I think it's fair to say, becoming an alcoholic from the early years of the show. And that, you wrote about sort of waking up with the puffy eyes and breaking the ice on the counter and putting them on your eyes and trying to find something stronger than Visine. It's so otherworldly to think back on that version of Carolyn Ingalls and think she was having real struggles like everyone does. And some were dark.
Yeah. I had always struggled with depression. And from time to time, I had these bad episodes when I went out drinking. But because I was now successful, I had more money. We went out to nice restaurants. We bought bottles of fancy wine, and drinking became more of a lifestyle thing. But when the contract conflict started, then I began to sink into that, and go home and feel sorry for myself and drink and say, you'd drink too if you had these problems, and rationalize my own bad behavior, really.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is you love the scenes with Mr. Edwards.
I do.
his moonshine.
Victor was a wonderful actor, and we had a real intimacy in the scenes, and I loved playing with him.
Well, who else did you love playing across? I mean, of course, Mrs. Olsen was always a favorite for those of us. Yes. Did you and she get along?
Oh, we were such good friends. She
Oh, that's
was
so nice to
such a
hear.
good friend to me. Oh, yeah. She was great during all this struggle. And right after my dad died, we went over to Tucson to shoot some scenes for the show. And Scotty invited me to come and have dinner in her room. She said, "Yeah, just come on and have dinner in my room. It'll be quiet." And I just felt like I needed protection from the crew at the bar and all that going on.
Hmm.
And we just formed this bond because we loved to rehearse. We loved our egg scenes. We loved to have
Yes.
these fights with each other. It was so gratifying.
Oh, she was always telling you your eggs were too small. And then sometimes you would take a stand, say, I'm going to bring them someplace else. It was great. She was one of the best characters, and your relationship was fun to watch. But listen, I've been there too. I understand what it's like to be one of the only women at an all men's table and the dynamics there. And it can be awkward and uncomfortable. And if you're not with the right guys at that table, it can be very stressful. And I'm sure even more so in the early 1970s.
Well, I think there are things that went on then that can't go on now, thank heavens. And isn't it fantastic that these brave young women spoke up and the hashtag Me Too movement got going? I mean, it really is marvelous. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Mike ever assaulted me or harassed me sexually by touching me or anything like that. But there's an atmosphere of put down. There's an atmosphere that is denigrating to a woman.
That's recognized too under sexual harassment law as a hostile work environment. I mean, that's a real claim that can be filed.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be.
And I would file it today.
Is that right? I mean, what about that? Because one of the questions people have is, why now? Why would you come out and tell a story now after all these years?
Well, I didn't know that's what I was going to do. I started writing my memories. I started exploring the whole form of memoir as a kind of book and took classes, and it began to evolve. And I realized that if I'm going to tell my story, I'm going to have to tell my story. I can't leave out the tricky parts. And if I have anything to offer, it's my honesty and the lessons I've learned.